So the key is gonna be not to blow myself up or burn the house down. Well, you guys, Terry is dead once again. So I took him over to a buddy's house and I was riding it around, and I started noticing that every time Terry was on a hill and leaned over, I started smelling gas. So after that happening several times, I decided to investigate, and the fuel tank is leaking. So I already started tearing everything apart. I got the fuel pump taken out of the tank, and the fuel filter is just sitting down below. This fuel tank's already a bad design. You have this gully right here that goes around that pump, and anytime that fuel would spill, or just because it's so open under here, water would get up in there and it wouldn't drain out. There's no way for it to drain here, so it just rusts out the top of that tank. Now you can also see the inside of that tank is covered in rust once again. If you saw the video where I purchased this thing down in Busco Beach, you know that tank was already extremely rusty. I cleaned it out the best I can and it's right back to where it is. So that tank's getting removed. Now the reason this thing was leaking so bad is because the fuel pump had a rubber gasket on it that sat right here on this lip, and with the tank rusting out so bad and this lip being pretty rusty, it just couldn't get a good seal, and all that fuel was just leaking out of here. I'm gonna pull this tank, and it seems like it would be fairly easy. You got 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on that side, which are already disconnected, but I can't pull the tank out this way because of the brake assembly. I can't go out of the top. There's just not enough room. I'm hitting the body, and I can't go out this way because of the shock tower here. And I can't pull the body because that would be just way too much work. The entire side-by-side, the whole body of it is one piece. So I'm gonna cut this tank out. So the key is gonna be not to blow myself up or burn the house down. So I'm gonna fill this tank with a little bit of water, and hopefully that helps. That was sweet. That was definitely a lot more involved than I thought it was gonna be, but it is out. I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but you can see just how much rust is in this thing, and it was really nasty. And with that divider in there was no way I was gonna get back into this little area here and sand it and clean it and go through that whole process. So we're just gonna put a fuel cell in this thing. So there is a lot more room in this engine bay, but I do have this beam here, which is very structural. So I'm gonna try my best not to cut that, but if I can't get a fuel cell in here without cutting it, I guess I'll cut it. Another thing I noticed is the front differential's right here, and right here is the breather hose for it, which is located pretty far below that hood. So when I had this hood underwater, water definitely got into that front differential, so I'm gonna have to get that oil changed. So I figure while everything's tore apart, I'll extend that breather hose, get it much higher up on here so I can tackle deeper water. Since I have all this room up here, I wanna relocate that radiator. I wanna throw it in the back and rear mount it behind the seats. So I'm thinking I'll pull all the skid plates, and that'll give me access to the hoses that are under there, and I can drain it since that is the lowest point of the cooling system. And then I will go ahead and pull that radiator out. Something's definitely gonna need done with these skid plates. They're getting destroyed. They're just really thin sheet metal. And then every single one of these bolts hangs down. So I would say about 80% of them were smashed and just a pain to take off. Radiator hoses are disconnected, and I believe the only thing holding this radiator in are those 2 bolts there and these ones here. So I'll pull those out and hopefully be able to lift this radiator right on out of there. Absolutely nothing in there. Lots of room to put a fuel cell. I did some measurements. I'm pretty sure one's gonna fit. There's the radiator, the reservoir, and all the hoses right there. So I think we're ready to get this thing in the back. So I'm gonna get some parts ordered and we're gonna come back to this next weekend. It is the very next weekend and you may have noticed that all the fuel system components came in. We got a fuel cell, fuel pump, filters, all the lines we need, all the fittings we're gonna need, but in complete busted beater fashion. I have a big surprise coming to the channel, so all this stuff isn't actually gonna be needed just yet. Instead, I'm gonna be doing a 180 and I'm gonna be tearing down this Reaper even further. I'm gonna be focusing on the inside of this thing. These seats are coming out, that center console's gonna be coming out, and I'm also gonna remove that rack and maybe start removing this roll cage. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this roll cage, if you can even call it that. This piece here is kind of structural. You have this big base plate with all those bolts in it, and that's welded. But then these back pieces here, they're just bolted to sheet metal, and then you got one single bolt connecting it to this structural piece. And then this top part here, you got two single bolts connecting this end of it, and then this end, absolutely nothing connecting it except for that piece of sheet metal. So not good, could definitely give someone a false sense of security if they don't know much about these machines. So this cage is coming out. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, I'm pulling the body off this thing. And you might be asking, why in the world did you cut out the tank if you were gonna pull the body? Well, I had no idea. I had access to an engine lift, but all the stars aligned and here we are. And if you're wondering why I'm pulling the body off of this thing, well, there's a few reasons. I believe the frame on this thing, it's pretty weak. I already know that. There's a few dents in a couple spots just from hitting some rocks. So I wanna see if there's ways I can strengthen that. Now, the second reason is I'm gonna be building a roll cage. And the surprise I've been talking about is this tube bender. It's really gonna open up the channel to a ton of different projects. I think I'm gonna be able to do a lot of really cool things with this thing, and I'm gonna be able to get a custom cage in the Reaper. It's gonna be a lot safer than that stock cage, which is the most important thing, and it's gonna make it look better, so that's also pretty cool. So I believe I have everything disconnected on this Reaper that I need to completely remove the body. So I guess there's really only one thing left to do, and that's to lift this thing and see if we hang up anywhere.